As you know, we have started this series for about 2 years now, and we have been very fortunate to have amongst the best speakers in the world to come and speak to us, including two Nobel laureates. And we have also tried our best to have a proper optimal mix of domestic speakers and foreign speakers to come and tell us about their thoughts on contemporary issues. As you know, that Foundation for Economic Growth is a research-based policy advice and believes in policy-oriented research. It is in context of that we had started this Friday webinar series, which have been continuing for nearly 2 years. Today's talk is on economy of Bangladesh, and to speak to us on the economy of
I can hear you very well. Others can hear Dr. Charan Singh.
He is also a member of the United Nations Committee for Development Policy, founding chair of Southern Voice Network of think tanks, chair of LDC Monitor, a development alliance, and convener Citizens Platform for SDGs Bangladesh, and a member of the supervisory board of BRAC International. He is a non-resident fellow at Center for Global Development, Washington, D.C. Dr. Bhattacharya was Bangladesh's ambassador and permanent international organization to the Holy See. He was the special advisor on LDCs to the Secretary General UNCTAD and chair of the UNCTAD Governing Board, leader of the least developed countries group in the United Nations system, Geneva. Dr. Debapriya had been in high-level policy in various committees of Bangladesh government. He also serves in the board and working groups of a number of national, regional, and international development organizations. He is a regular commentator in the media, including the BBC and Voice of America. His edited books include Bangladesh's Graduation from the Least Developed Countries Group, Pitfalls and Promises, and Southern Perspectives on the Post-2015 International Agenda, both published by Routledge. His forthcoming co-edited book is on delivering SDGs in South Asia in post-pandemic context, issues and challenges being brought out by Springer. Professor Bhattacharya holds a PhD in economics from Plekhanov National Development Institute, Moscow, and had been a postdoctoral fellow at Queen Elizabeth House, Oxford. He has held a number of visiting positions, including Senior Fulbright Fellow at the Center for Global Development, Washington, D.C. To chair the session today, we have our chairman, Dr. Arvind Virmani. Dr. Arvind Virmani has worked in the World Bank and Planning Commission. He has also worked as the chief economic advisor of our country and representing India as executive director to his credit. Himself an active research scholar, he has also played an active role in public policy and reforms that have taken place in our country right from the beginning, from 1991 onwards. He is chairing the session today. With your permission, sir, should we start?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Charan Singh. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I must apologize for changing the timing because I'm in a different time zone. So that was a bit of a complication. I guess we missed the coordination, and I find that professor is also says there's a public holiday. Maybe we should have shifted it to another date. But anyway, So with that, because I'll also may have connection problems. So, Professor, why don't you start right away, and then hopefully we can have a longer discussion. I have several questions which I will ask you at the end of your presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Dr. Charan Singh for inviting me to this August gathering. We met at the Kautilya conference recently in Delhi, and I have come to know about EGROW, and I have gladly accepted this kind invitation. Dr. Arvind Virmani is very well known to me through his works and his reputation since when he came back from the World Bank at EGROW and thereafter. So it is an immense privilege for me to speak under his leadership today. I see a number of colleagues have joined in. My best wishes to them, including the Bijaya greetings. The Durga Puja has just ended, and so I can always communicate that what you call the seasonal greetings to all of you, irrespective of religion. So that's the point. My grandmother once told me, great-grandmother in fact, that never make more than 3 points. Even the most intelligent one will not remember the fourth one. So what are my 3 points for today? My 3 points for today are, first, Bangladesh economy, since we are talking about that, 50 years of Bangladesh economy, what are the achievements? This is one. The second point, the world is going through a turbulent period. We know about the global economic challenges. We know the geoeconomics, how they're shaping things, geopolitics too. So what are the current challenges of the Bangladesh economy? That is my second point. One is an achievement, and the second is the current challenges. And then my third point is Indo-Bangla relationship. So the third point would be more about how the Indo-Bangla relationship, what are the components and how do we see it evolve in the coming days. So these are my very marginal 3 points. Let me start with the first one. Bangladesh is a $500 billion economy. Every other year, it is superseding different countries and coming towards the top, in the top 30 global economies. It is supposed to become within the 2025, within the next 10, 20 years. So it's an emerging economy and one of the fastest growing economy in South Asia, if not in Asia. And we have just celebrated 50 years of our independence. And the 50 years of independence has come on the back of possibly two major achievements. One is that the country has been ticked off, has been eligible for graduating out of the least developed country group, which is around 50 countries. I sit in the UN committee which deals with these groups. So that was one. The Bangladesh in 2026 will be coming out of the least developed country group. The second one is that in 2015, you know, the LDC is an UN category, but if you go by the IMF and the World Bank category, where income only, then we have left the low income country group and we have joined the low middle income country group in 2015. And if you look at the achievements in the MDGs, other than possibly the employment agenda, the goal, we have achieved most of them, and possibly a bit lagging behind on forestation. On the SDGs, I think the world was off track before the COVID. During the COVID, it has done badly, but we had been trying to be one of the forerunners among the developing countries in delivering the SDGs. So when now we are having almost $3,000 per capita income. In the recent past, as Bangladesh crossed India in terms of per capita income, according to our official statistics, there was a huge hue and cry in both sides of the border, I understand. So as you see that Bangladesh is changing its profile in a major way. And the profiles are really captured by the structural changes happening within the economy and also the changes which are happening in the global relationship. When we talk about our major achievements in Bangladesh of the last 50 years, I usually pick a couple of them. My first and foremost is on that is the life expectancy at birth. As you may know, that the current average life expectancy at birth is around 73 years. Bangladesh, in fact, has more than that. So to think of Bangladesh having more than an average global life expectancy at birth is a very, very, a commendable achievement, I would say. I'm not fully aware of the Indian numbers in this case. The second part of it, if you look at, is the population. The Bangladesh, when it became independent 50 years back, our population growth rate was almost 3%. And now we have brought it down to 1.02%, something like that. It's a huge demographic transition in certain ways. And if you look at Pakistan, which we have gladly left behind, so it is still in 2% around, which they have the population growth rate has still hovered around that. This population fall in the population growth rate, fertility rate needs to be appreciated in the context of the abject poverty, the lack of, social norms, religious norms, lack of participation of women in the labor force. So in that context is a huge achievement. Of course, microcredit finance, involvement of women in the microcredit had been a major driver of this thing. The third, the issue which one would like to look at, the second one, when we became independent, the idea was that we were 7.5 crore, 75 million at that time. And people used to say, particularly the Western people at that time, that Bangladesh is a perfect case to prove Malthus was right. So they're going to eat each other. What else are they going to eat? So during the last 50 years, we have doubled our population, more than that. We are now 160 million. From 75 million, we have come to 160 million now. More than double. But our crop production, our cereal production, our rice and wheat production has more than trebled during this period. So we are now producing food for not only for 75 million, we are producing food, rice and wheat, cereals for 160 million at least twice a day. So this food security and this food achievement, of course, the Green Revolution to be credited for some fallouts are also well known in terms of use of pesticides and others and drying up of water. But nonetheless, food security, food production is another major achievement. The third achievement which I would like to flag here, when Bangladesh became independent, more than 100% of its budget was financed by foreign aid. But to that extent, what the government was dependent, not only the development budget, but also the revenue budget itself has to draw on financial flows coming from sale of food aid received under PL 480 or something like that. So that from that 100%, today the share of foreign aid in Bangladesh is less than 2% of the GDP. So it is a fantastic transformation for a country which had emerged as an aid dependent and converted itself to a trade dependent country. Trade in both goods and services, both remittance income inflow and also export by the exports of garments, apparels in particular, which unfortunately is one of the high concentration of product over there. But we also see the new ones coming out, but not only the IT based, but ceramic industry. But second most important now is the pharmaceuticals export. So I won't go much on details on this achievement part. So what are the challenges within which we are looking forward in the coming years in that way? So the coming years, the achievement, the major challenge is that over this period, whilst we have grown very fast, we have also become very unequal economy and society. Inequality has grown significantly. And this inequality concerns not only the income, not only your assets, but consumption as well. notwithstanding the public interventions we have for the social security nets for the left behind or the disadvantaged people. So inequality remains one of the major structural challenge in this case. The second one, of course, the major challenge, cross-cutting challenge is, of course, the issue of governance. Governance, when it comes to the governance, I mentioned here in terms of access to public resources in particular, whether and services, whether it is about quality education, quality health services, or your protection given to the social protection given to the vulnerable communities. So these issues are very much there. So for example, the quality of education has become a major challenge at this moment. What we see, we are getting graduates, but not necessarily employable people in many cases. So there are some medium-term challenges which are showing up. But what is to be noted that in many countries which have gone in the recent past, developing countries, for what has been called as the premature deindustrialization, that didn't go from agriculture growth to industry, then to the services, but have gone straight to services development. Bangladesh, incidentally, has avoided that path. So during this path, the slack created by the rollback of the agriculture sector in the GDP composition has been taken over more by the manufacturing sector. But in this case, unfortunately, the large industries had been more beneficiary than the small and medium one when it comes to accessing public resources. The current challenges at this moment, like any other country in the world, including India, is the inflation and the price rise. The issue of price rise is, of course, driven by what we say the 3F in Bangladesh in our import basket. It is food, it is fuel, and it is fertilizer. This 3F really drives the imported inflation in the country at this moment. But I think this has come at a time, unfortunately, when Bangladesh is experiencing weakening of its external balances, whether it is current account balance or the balance of payment or overall balance. And as a result, we see depletion of the reserves and weakening of the exchange rate. So I might be saying things which may describe any country of the world nowadays as we speak, other than United States, where the dollar has become stronger and has gone into other places. So because of that, and also because of the global possible recession, as Bangladesh, 60% of the economy is now linked to the global economy. So the growth prospect has been brought down, or outlook has become sober, but nonetheless it stands at 6% plus according to the World Bank. So this year, we are very concerned about how the recession will play out in Europe and United States in 2023, as it may weaken further our export possibilities, because people are buying less shirts and wears garments. So so that is a worry. But on the other hand, flip side, every challenge has a opportunity on the other side. So the fuel price has gone up, which means more income in the Middle East, which means more construction and more Bangladeshi workers going to the Middle East. So that's the flip side of that. But the remittance earning itself cannot really balance the external budget, because of the exchange rate which we use is a managed float. So it is not market driven. So as a result, sometimes the government offers additional premium or benefits to the remittance earners, but it creates an artificial dual rate, but which really encourages the hundi system, or what you call is hundi and hawala the same in the Indian term lexicon? I don't know, but lots of hundi in informal trading. So the official central bank account doesn't record them in that way. So that is a challenge which we see in the coming days. The food security issue is a critical one. We have 3 harvests a year. We are lucky on that. the one of the major harvests coming up, almond. But because of there was no rain in the early part of the season, and the fertilizer prices have gone up, the fuel prices have gone up. As a result, the cost of production is going up for the farmers. And so they are also very discouraged in terms of going for farming. But also because the procurement program of the government, the public procurement program, also is not very effective in the pricing itself, and other corruption issues are involved. So that is how Bangladesh stands. In fact, Bangladesh stands at a point of, I would call, double transition in the future, in the next. One transition is in the case of development, because we would need to do some structural reforms to consolidate the achievements of our last decades, and also we stand at the crossroad of a democratic transition. Like India, we will be also facing an election in 2023, very early 2023, and a democratic deficit had been one of the complaints of the non-state actors, and so we look forward to very much a good election which can provide necessary accountability and prop up the efficiency of the economy. Coming to my third point on Indo-Bangla relationship, without going into these emotional platitudes that we are friends for life, let me come to dissect a bit the relationship. At this moment, India remains the second largest trading partner for Bangladesh, with a huge trade deficit, which is a politicized debate very much in Bangladesh. The first partner, of course, is China. And we import from China and India, or large part of it are the raw materials for our textile industry and export-oriented industry. So one may complain about that, but it is also very much a productive relationship, because it's more like a global value chain we are seeing here, or regional value chain over here. If you see the major achievements of Indo-Bangla relationship, as you know, I love the number 3. So my 3 achievements I see in Indo-Bangla relationship. The first one is, of course, the Ganges Water Treaty. The second one is a land demarcation treaty, exchange of enclaves. And the third one is respect for mutual security, concerns of mutual security, and driving away all the insurgents from each other territory. I think these are the major 3 achievements I will highlight. Of course, there are, now coming to my future outlook, again 3. The first one is the outstanding agenda of Indo-Bangla relationship. What are the outstanding agenda? The first outstanding agenda is, of course, the casualties taking place in the border region. So this is, usually it is mentioned that these are during the late night cattle traders crossing the borders, and they're being shot by the border security forces. But the fact remains, this is a very, very emotive issue in Bangladesh, that the innocent people die at the border and killed by the border security forces. There are debates on both sides that also how many people on border security forces got affected. But essentially, these are very innocent human beings, possibly doing informal trading, and sometimes, of course, with illegal goods. So this is one thing. So the idea had been not to use live ammunitions, they use rubber bullets or others, and should not be shooting above the knee, or joint patrolling of the borders. But I alert my colleague in India that this is one of the very emotive issues in Bangladesh, in Indo-Bangladesh relationship. The second one is our Tista Water Treaty, which is not happening. We have been told that the center is interested in it, whereas the West Bengal government is not interested in it. So we see the challenges of a federal structure over here, and during the last visit of my Prime Minister to Delhi, we were hoping against hope that something will come out of it. In fact, other than a marginal water sharing or diversion treaty, nothing else has come out. We have more than 50 common rivers. We have never been able to move further beyond one or two. So the joint watershed management will be definitely one of the future issues with the climate actions taking place. But there are these outstanding issues. Then there are built-in issues. Built-in issues are driven mostly by the line of credit provided by India to Bangladesh. It amounts now almost $8 billion over the decade. But unfortunately, over the 10 years or 12 years, we have not been able to use more than 30% of it. And those which so I need to alert you that these line of credits are tight credit. So initially 80% of the imports under the credit had to be done from India. I think it is now, after some negotiation, come down to 65. So which essentially means that Bangladesh may not get all good value for the money. Incidentally, India has converted $200 million into grant, which has gone to the funding of the Padma Bridge, which we have opened up very recently. So the issue is that inability or this very slow use of the Indian lines of credit is a major problem. What we have done the procurements, for example, railway automobiles, railway engines, those have come, but in terms of creating more infrastructure, even for those connecting roads for India's transshipments, we have not been very much able to move forward on that. Yeah, there is geopolitics in operation here. China remains one of the major supplier of finance. We always talk about whose money is being used more efficiently and how fast. So that is an issue which is very much there. So the built-in issue is that creating an infrastructural facility which will really allow better trading between the two countries and also to the third country. Bangladesh is very keen to exports to Bhutan and Nepal, passing through the very short piece of land of India. Similarly, Bhutan and Nepal are also very interested to use Bangladesh ports, Chittagong and Mongla. But the peculiar thing you may not know that if you take a load from Chittagong to Kathmandu by a lorry, incidentally, we have not been able to sign up to because of Bhutan, in fact, for the Asia automobile connectivity, the agreement. Right. So the carrier which goes to Kathmandu from Chittagong with load has to come back empty. Cannot carry load from Kathmandu to Bangladesh in that way. So those kind of things are still around. So, and also the connectivity which are taking place, not multimodal connectivity. It is not only through the road, but also waterways, inland waterways, and also the coastal waterways. We have signed up various treaties on that. So what I would say, there is a second group of activity which are going on under the existing agreements of various sorts. The third thing is the emerging agenda. What is an emerging agenda? You may know that the CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, is on the table between India and Bangladesh, almost similar to what India has done with Sri Lanka. And we are thinking of that not only trade, and not only trade in goods, but also trade in services, and also the connectivity has to be linked. We call it triangulation: trade, connectivity, and investment. So without the investment, the other things will not really work or economically viable. We have given a specially dedicated special economic zone to India. We have, unfortunately, didn't see much enthusiasm of investing. However, India has emerged, Adani Group in particular, as a major supplier of energy to us. They are also part of joint venture, which we have opened up recently in Rampal, where my Prime Minister and the Indian Prime Minister opened it up. But the environmental people have great reservation about that because it is near the Sundarban forest, the mangrove forest over there. So that is another part of it. So the future of Indo-Bangla relationship lies possibly in opening up new areas, not only the traditional trade, not only the land-based connectivity, but also air connectivity and waterways, coastal waterways, but also with investment and finance. And finance is a major issue over here in terms of, and as you all know, that finance has become a major issue globally with the sanctions put on Russia. How do we do trade with Russia, not only Russia, but also third country, using non-dollar accounts? So in Bangla, that is an issue which is very much out there. Somebody really dropped the idea they're using Indian rupee for something. I think it was very much, it got a very strong pushback from Bangladesh on that. But the other part which is important is the digital integration. The digital integration along with innovation related integration, and science and technology has to play a big part. Science and technology has proven to be a major catalyst during the COVID period. We benefited from the vaccine which were produced by India, although at one point in time we experienced a disruption, although we bought them, but India for its own need has to stop the exports, which had hiccups. Finally, we have worked it out. So as we see that there are a major issue out there, huge possibilities, but the geopolitics as it stands today, it creates a lot of tension. So the geopolitics, as we will see, it is more with relation to China. Bangladesh intends to keep equally good relation with China, and they hope that it should not come at the cost of other relationships. Bangladesh wants to keep the similar economic relationship with Middle East, with Saudi Arabia, European Union, and North America, its major markets. So they're interested in that. They're also interested in reaching out to new markets in Southeast Asia and also to Japan as it is opening up, and Australia. So Bangladesh stands, this is the challenge. Next door Indian with India locked country, but which also looks very strongly to the global economy in South Asia, but with the world. That is how I would think our economic diplomacy would define itself. But at the end of the day, a prosperous, stable, and hopefully a secular India is something which remains a good, potentially good asset for Bangladesh to grow as well. Please do remember that whatever happens in India has its ripple effect, whether it is in Shaheen Bagh or elsewhere, because in the era of identity politics, one community which is a majority in one country happens to be the minority in other country. So, and vice versa. So as we treat our individual groups and communities is also reflected in the very highly sensitive economic cooperation relationship over there. So I think Bangladesh-India relationship is notwithstanding the mutually beneficial opportunities, will often face a serious hindrance of political nature in our respective countries in many ways. I mentioned that we are approaching a democratic transition as well as a development transition. I want to hope that even in the bad winds which we see in the global economy, the cloud gathering in the corner, we will be able to, in our region, move further forward in this context nonetheless. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me open the discussion with 2 or 3 questions / points.
Arvindji, you would have to speak up a bit more.
Hello.
And closer to the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to open the discussion with a couple of points slash questions.
Yep.
So let me start with the issue of connectivity. Uh, of course, now they're kind of, to simplify a bit, there are now three aspects of connectivity. One is the conventional physical multimodal, which you mentioned. The second is energy, and the third is digital. So let me just briefly talk about those, and perhaps you can give your reaction later. People may recall that at the SAARC summit in Nepal, which was, I think, in 2014, there were four connectivity agreements which were agreed by everybody except one country. We need not name them. And three of them, they kind of, even the remaining country had agreed to sign, but then wedged on. Now, I mentioned that because I think the idea has been that at least those things which were agreed there could be done by BIMSTEC. So I think that's something I would think that Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, if we all sign up to, it would ease some of the problems which you have just mentioned, which clearly are there. So I think those agreements, everybody agrees to. I think we need to sign them and we need to implement them. I don't see any real difficulty, at least from the Indian side, on that matter. So I'm not quite sure why these things are held up. The second, of course, is energy. Now, energy, of course, there is a conventional part, which is traditional oil or oil-related products, but there is also now the question of renewable energy and interconnection of grids, etc. So I don't know much about how that is progressing, but I think certainly that would be again something which could benefit, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, connecting the electricity grids, with surplus hydropower in Bhutan and Nepal. I still remember when I think maybe 15 years ago, when I did a comparative study of growth, I was shocked to find that Bhutan was among the fastest growing economies in the world at that time. And it turned out it was a lot to do with hydropower. When they developed their hydropower, they grew tremendously fast in that particular period. The third aspect, which I think is very important and perhaps not really fully appreciated in Bangladesh, is digital connectivity. India, in the last 5 years or so, has been a pioneer in what we call digital public goods. I don't know whether you've heard of the UPI interface, which is really a global achievement, which has been noted in the US and many other countries. So, given how fast digital connectivity is happening in India and the development of these platforms. For example, the latest one is something called UND. It's a market platform, which in principle gives India and other countries who join it, Bangladesh, other countries, an ability for their companies to compete for e-markets against the big guys like Google and Walmart and all these fellows. So there's a lot of digital innovation going on in India. So it's not just a matter of using the rupee, for example. When there is a digital convertible rupee, it in principle, using some of these platforms like the UPI would actually become much easier for to have a kind of global currency, which is different way of thinking from the current one. So I just want to mention that this whole issue of digital connectivity is going to be very important for the next 5-10 years, and perhaps you have some comments on that. So that is the connectivity part. The second, which was slightly, I wasn't, perhaps you can explain a bit. You mentioned droughts and public procurement. I was not I mean, I always thought of Bangladesh as a a water surplus and a heavy. There's so much water. I mean, that's what we think of Bangladesh. and a little surprising that how come do you have droughts and floods? Of course, one has heard of too much water. So that was a little bit of a puzzle for me. Perhaps you can tell us where. And finally, what we would be interested, in case you've done any work on it, is comparing Bangladesh with Pakistan. You know, we know, of course, you had a shared history till 70, and then different. So I think it's an interesting for us to see how this completely different growth rate. I mean, you've overtaken them within, I think, 20 years or 25 years. So if you have any insights into why this difference in growth rates, that may be of interest to many listeners here. Over to you. So if you can respond to that, then we'll move on to questions from others.
No, I think there's not much to respond. On the I appreciate the 3 points you have just made, Dr. Virmani. On the connectivity, I agree, but you have mentioned SARC. Would you kindly tell me what is SARC?
Well, the last time SARC was there was in Nepal summit. I mentioned the Nepal summit.
No, I'm teasing.
Nothing has happened since then.
For us,
but the point
SARC is de facto dead.
But the answer, I have an answer. No,
is,
there was one country which firstly did not accept the 4 agreements. Everybody else did. So I mean, I don't.
I'm trying to say
I don't need to
the
elaborate.
overall framework of SARC is in comatose. So
the reason is clear from what I have just said. Why? I don't want to get into individual names.
And also on the BIMSTEC, you see why? Since I'm talking to my Indian colleagues, I need to be a bit more candid about it. So for India, in our regional cooperation, we have found on the one side, it is Pakistan. And the SARC is de facto had been a hostage to Indo-Pakistan relationship, for good or for bad. And on the other hand, we have also wanted to move with BCIM, Bangladesh, China, India, and Myanmar, which again, India has been also not very, I would say not cold feet, but had never been strategically so interested about it. So what we have now reduced ourselves is sub-regional cooperation. So we have BBIN, BIN, or either with Nepal, with Bhutan, all those things, what is happening. And with BIMSTEC, if you look at all the technical studies which have been done, we don't get responses from the respective countries, and it has not moved as such in BIMSTEC as well. And Dhaka hosts the headquarters of it. So we, at this moment, it's very funny that the regional cooperation as a collective instrument at this moment remains very subdued. So, and we see only bilateral and at best trilateral initiatives which are currently on board in this case. And Indo-Bangla relationship exemplifies that in the last 10 years. Since the Islamabad summit was cancelled, after that sad incident in the border between India and Pakistan. So after that, it remains an Indo-Bangladesh relationship is growing autonomously in that sense, without the reference to the regional framework in that way. On energy, I agree that renewables, as you know, we are building our first nuclear power plant with the Russian support, similar to what India has built, the same type of 1,005 to 1,200 megawatts each of them, strings and etc. So we hope to have it within next 2 years, but it has turned out to be immensely costly, and how it will, in terms of security and thereafter management of the leftovers, we will see how it goes. We will see. So the region energy issue is very much in the future, which will grow, both also on the renewable energy and greener energy, digital network definitely. But let me come to the drought issue. You see, with Bangladesh is demonstrating serious manifestation of deterioration of the climate, the ecological challenges. So what you said, the drought, it's not drought, it's rainfall comes now late. So the harvesting season gets affected. And the second part of it is that you get erratic rainfall at times when the rainfall is not supposed to be there. So that is affecting the agriculture in many ways. In the coastal belt, the salinity is increasing, water level is rising. That is another point on that. We see landslides happening at the same time. And that's why the whole watershed management, joint watershed management of the 50 plus rivers have become so important for us. And we definitely look forward to that. Indo-Pakistan relation, Indo-Bangladesh relationship remains, as you know, is quite sensitive, but let the sleeping dog lie. So during Mr. Imran Khan's period, there had been overtures on behalf of Imran Khan towards my prime minister to call, to invite, and etc. But I haven't seen till now in the recent past a ministerial level visit, even for intergovernmental events. So we have never sent anybody beyond a state minister to any of these events as it stands. But
my question was not political, purely economic in terms of the.
No, that is
Pakistan
is no economic relationship as such is really discussed.
Yeah.
So the earlier market was more jute and tea. These were the two major products which we to export. So we have not, as such, is very dormant at this moment.
Yeah.
And since there is no direct connectivity and etc., it's all there. And since there is no political warmth in it, so it doesn't really also feed into the bureaucrats to look for opportunities or the private sector to go for that. It is not very much there. The only thing which we did during the last flood, we have sent some support to them on the relief. So that's all we have at this moment.
So
and the cricket, of course.
I just remembered, actually, I had, unfortunately, because I was traveling, I'm a little out of sync, but I represented Bangladesh, by the way, at the IMF. And
of course,
it was during my tenure.
You were the joint representative of the region. I
was the director representing India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. And we got, during my tenure, we got the loans for both Sri Lanka and Bangladesh from the IMF. And I remember it was a big struggle in both cases. I don't want to name countries, but Western countries were not very pleased with either Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. And it was a tough job to get that thing moving. But anyway, that's just an aside. And I used to criticize them roundly since then for their bias against our countries as against some others. Again, I don't want to mention. Yeah. Anyway, so with that, let me, Dr. Charan Singh, have you noticed any questions? Anybody asking you? Because I have a small screen. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'll have a look at
any
that.
Questions?
I had a few questions myself. Professor Dev, in India, we have been thinking about the textile exports, which Bangladesh has done so exceedingly well. And I was wondering whether you would like to tell us something about the textile exports and how Bangladesh has achieved such high progress in this. The second thing, as you rightly said, Bangladesh has overtaken India as far as the per capita income is concerned. So, what were the factors that played in the last few years that catapulted Bangladesh's per capita income to rise so rapidly? That was the other thought in my mind. Bangladesh has also been doing, as you said, the population growth rate has come down dramatically in Bangladesh. And I was wondering, how did Bangladesh achieve that dramatic scaling down of the population growth rate? Thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Charan Singh. On the textile exports, I think it goes back to the days when we have the MFA, the multi-fiber arrangement. So which gave country quotas and we wanted to utilize them. And we didn't know that those existed till the South Koreans came to us. The South Koreans set up the industries to start with, and then they exported from Bangladesh under their rules of origin, which entitled them to have market access duty-free into the European and the Australian on the North American market. So, and then the diffusion of technology and the skills took place within the country. So the domestic investors took it over. The difference in that between, for example, the similar thing happened in Cambodia. The difference between Cambodia and Bangladesh is that our export is essentially driven, not essentially, overwhelmingly driven by the Bangladeshi entrepreneurs. Whereas in Cambodia, the Cambodian exports are driven by foreign direct investment, Chinese and others. So we always think that this is our strength. But what has happened also that after the MFA phase out, there had to be double transformation. Double transformation means you have to convert your yarn to fabric and fabric to clothing in order to get market access or special privileges. So we grew the backward linkages, setting up the textile industries and accessories in order to have higher value added in the country. But having said that, as I mentioned earlier, that India remains one of the major supplier of textile goods to Bangladesh as input. And so we access Indian yarn, we access Indian fabric, and then we stitch them and send out. It was a challenge for Bangladesh, similar to Sri Lanka, whether we would become a tailor and a weaver at the same time, or we will specialize as a tailor, not as a weaver. Sri Lanka decided to be only the tailor and the high-end tailor, the value-added tailors. Bangladesh wanted to be both the tailor and the weaver at the same time. So that's how we are maintaining it. But the advantage of, the major, the magic was the zero duty market access to the European Union and the Americans and the Australian and the Canadians. It is the market access as least developed country, and Bangladesh, it was available to all LDCs in the world, but Bangladesh could use it, others they could not use it in that way. So that is where possibly the entrepreneurship of Bengali entrepreneurship to be credited for that in that way. And on the issue of population growth, as I said, it's a miracle in many ways, but it was also a public policy on the part of the government to take the family planning at a very serious level, and with foreign aid supported various kinds of accessories for birth control were freely distributed house to house, so that the women did not have to come to the clinics or to the hospitals or the community centers to get access to those things, and that was a major thing. And it was more the supply driven at the doorstep which made the difference in availability of family planning accessories and goods at the doorstep, which made in the recent past, our fertility rate is stagnating. It is not falling as fast as we expected. Maybe we have reached the replacement ratios in certain ways. But one of the reasons is possibly the government has pulled back them to the community level. So it is expected that the women are supposed to, or the men are supposed to come to the community centers and the health centers and get access to that. Possibly this is now affecting us. We may need to rethink those kind of policies over there. So, but this is it. But participation in the labor force had definitely the part. Where the microcredit has played a very encouraging role. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, there is.
Chansing?
Yeah, there is a question which is in the chat box. I can read it. Is India should open transit facilities for Bangladesh to Nepal and Bhutan fully according to BBIN agreement to enjoy transit and corridor facilities for connectivity with Seven Sisters in future, as India is enjoying it at present, provided by Bangladesh?
The Bangladesh perception is that we are not exactly happy with the current situation. We have been talking too long and delivering too little. In the recent visit of my Prime Minister to Delhi, it was agreed that India offered, the Indian Prime Minister offered that Bangladesh can use India for third country exports, which essentially means to Nepal and Bhutan, if not to other countries. So we are still negotiating the regulatory framework, as I mentioned about the automobile movement, and also there are border logistics issue. Border logistics are not up to date with the modern challenges as we see, starting from the scanning machines to how do you really send the documents earlier to the border so that you have the permission ready by the time the cargo reaches there. Without unloading the cargoes, how can you scan them and ensure the security related issues? And there is a growing feeling in Bangladesh that we have provided tremendous amount of connectivity through Bangladesh to the northeast of Indian states, not only through one checkpoints, but I think at this moment 7 of them are working, and waterways as well. It started off with the Palatna construction of the Palatna power plant in Assam, I think so, or in northeast, when we allowed the Indian cargo to pass through Bangladesh. That was the beginning of it. Has not happened, and we have not applied any taxes or any excise or any other duties on that, on the goods which are going. It's a minimal rate. There are concerns in Bangladesh that whether we are really recovering the amortization of, or the depreciation value of the infrastructure which is being used, because we are a densely populated country, as you know. We have our own traffic jams also in the highways. So that those concerns are there. So it's very highly important that we move in resolving the bottlenecks in Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan movement via India in this case. This is an important issue over there. And whether if the time comes, possibly in certain ways, Bangladesh be able to move through Bombay, Mumbai, or if situation changes to Afghanistan or to Pakistan or to in the Central Asian republics through the Indian subcontinent in the future. That's what we look forward to.
Any other question?
No, we don't have any other question.
Thank you very much.
1:30 and we should probably close now.
Okay. Well, that's great. I just yeah, we have a few minutes, so I'll just mention. I think really you talked about oil dependence. I think my impression was India is actually the most dependent on imported oil, but I think you mentioned that Bangladesh seems to be in a similar situation. Is that because every time oil prices rise, it's a big call it what you will, a tax on India, and whenever they fall, it's a great benefit.
But
is it similar
India can politically, if I may say, India can politically afford to buy Russian oil through third party. We cannot politically afford to do that.
Yeah, again, I'm more interested in the economics, which I was trying to get clear. That is that situation similar to Bangladesh? I'm just trying to understand, is it that important? Because it's very important. Of course, because of the economy in other areas has grown, its dependence in a sense has gone down. But is Bangladesh heavily dependent on the price of oil? I mean, you always see this problem whenever oil prices rise.
Just to tell you, till the other day, I mean, a couple of years back, 30 to 40% of our fuel need was serviced by the domestic natural gas supply.
Yeah.
So the natural gas supply is exhausting, and we have not been able to do adequate amount of exploration, both in the high sea and also in mainland. That has created one of the structural problems and requiring further diversification of the energy supply. Yes.
Right. So in that sense, it's actually gone up somewhat over the last 10, 15. Okay, I get it. Yeah, right. Okay. With that, I thank you. I think it's been a fascinating capsule. I guess that's all we could do in 40 minutes, 1 hour, I guess. But it's given us a good overview of the Bangladesh economy for people, especially our listeners who are not that familiar with it. So thank you very much. Perhaps we can follow up and have more detailed discussions on some of the aspects like trade and connectivity, etc., at a future date. With that, let me hand it back to Charan to conclude the session.
So thank you, Professor. And thank you, Dr. Virmani, for chairing the session. And Professor Bhattacharya, we would like to have a long-term relationship with economists like you in Bangladesh and other think tanks, so that in South Asia, you are a progressive economy. We are the largest economy in South Asia now in this region. So if we can collaborate on research and on other things and other thoughts, that will be very good. Your talk today from a policy perspective is extremely enriching for all of us. You have given us the big picture, and that is really very useful for all of us. So we want to thank you, and we're looking forward to a long-term relationship with you and your think tank and other think tanks in Bangladesh to have collaborative work together. Next week, I'm happy to announce we have Professor Pulapre Balakrishnan on his new book, India's Economy from Nehru to Modi, A Brief History. So we're going to have a dialogue format, and in that dialogue format, I'll be joining and I'll be interacting with Professor Pulapre Balakrishnan and discussing about the ideology and economic development that has taken place in the region over these years. The timing would be 5:30 to 6:30, and I'll be sending out a flyer. I would request all of you to please join, spare some time, and enrich the participation. Once again, for today's interaction, I thank each one of you for joining us and enriching our discussion today. So once again, thanks, Professor Bhattacharya. Thanks, Dr. Virmani. I know you are away, but you kindly agreed to chair the session from a faraway place. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.